One of the many heartwarming opportunities for the Dean of Faculty is learning about each faculty member's many contributions to their respective fields. This year I feel doubly fortunate, given the additional work the pandemic has foisted upon each of us, to have read the many valuable comments provided as our faculty-nominated colleagues to be considered for our signature faculty awards. Your nominations drew attention to the work of several colleagues for each award. I thank each of you who nominated colleagues for your willingness to take time to recognize the work of others. Your comments were thoughtfully considered as we made our recommendations to President White. Vice President of Academic Affairs Burke and I were delighted to concur with FDC and carry that recommendation. I'm thrilled she also agreed. It is an honor to recognize one of our colleagues with the Edwin L. Minar Jr. Award for Scholarship. This award, which was established in 1981, recognizes the exceptional scholarly achievement named in honor of its first recipient, a former professor in the Department of Classical Languages from 1951 to 1980. As I summarize just a few of the many accomplishments of this year's recipient, I have made very minor edits to some quotes to build a little suspense as you learn about the body of work of one of our colleagues. However, I must admit, your letters were so carefully crafted, highlighting the impact of this colleague's work, that my attempt is likely insufficient to build much suspense. Still, I hope these comments capture at least a fraction of the depth, quality, and magnitude of our colleagues' contributions. As one of our colleagues noted, this colleague's work is something we should hold as a model for how to remain the top in our relative professions and still give back to the community. I value this quote because it highlights what makes DePauw faculty special, that we are great scholars and artists within our respective disciplines, and we graciously share our talents with the wider campus and world communities. As another colleague put it, what is evident as I look at this individual's scholarly contributions is that they aren't only about creating incredible work in their discipline, but doing so in ways that contribute in meaningful ways to the broader communities. One of you wrote, "This colleague and I arrived at DePauw at the same time, but I was building a career and they already had established an international career. But I didn't actually realize this until much later because he was engaging from day one, meeting me as an equal when his accomplishments were and are far beyond mine. I have seen this deep integrity and engagement throughout the almost 20 years I have known him. Despite his vast accomplishments, he meets each of us where we are, open and genuine, ready to get to work." In contextualizing the impact of our colleagues' work, one of you stated, "This colleague's work in either classical or jazz would impress on its own, yet he has enviable success in both genres. In the classical world, he has played with, among others, the Battle Creek Brass Band, Nashville Symphony Orchestra, Nashville Chamber Orchestra, Indianapolis Chamber Orchestra, and is a founding member of the Gateways Music Festival Orchestra, all critically respected ensembles that draw membership from national or international pools." In a PBS piece about the Gateway Music Festival Orchestra, our awardee describes the significance of his collaborative project in musicianship, performance, and festival development as vital, life-sustaining work, not only for himself, but for entire communities of musicians and aspiring young musicians. One of you took the time to reach out to Stanford Thompson, trumpeter and executive director of Play On Philly, who said, "He showed me the ropes and taught me a lot about dishing out a fair amount of respect, as I would later find myself playing side by side with trumpeters like him who were much older than me at the time. As a performer, I learned a lot about being fearless and to sit with him in the orchestra and brass quintet was an educational experience in itself. I remember being impressed with his big sound in the orchestra and how much he was able to adjust to chamber playing. Lastly, to see and hear someone at his level who looked like me left an impression. I hope the panel realizes that being a great person, role model, and mentor is a part of having great artistry. One colleague highlights key elements from our awardee's CV in the realm of jazz, where our awardee is noted as an inaugural member of an ensemble with international cultural significance, the Smithsonian Jazz Masterworks Orchestra, praised by The New Yorker as the best jazz repertory band in the country. So many of you mentioned that work. Our colleague continues, drummer Peter Erskine, David Baker, conductor of the Smithsonian Jazz Masterworks Orchestra for so many years, and the Glenn Miller Orchestra and the Woody Herman Orchestra are just a sample of the well-known jazz artists and ensembles with whom he has performed. In the music industry, one's network of collaborators and the organizations and ensembles one is connected to function as a kind of peer review system where excellence seeks excellence in developing collaborative partnerships and ensemble rosters. Moving to consider our awardee's studio accomplishments, one colleague explained, he's performed as a studio musician and in ensembles featured alongside popular music headliners like Aretha Franklin, The Temptations, and Stevie Wonder. These playing situations require one to transition smoothly among many different styles of playing and stylistic references one might encounter in instrumental arrangement of each artist's songs. Another added, but we trumpet players also know that the very best players, the ones who never, I mean never, make mistakes, can sight read anything and play in all ranges, styles, and levels of complexity, are studio musicians. Look at his list of studio artist recordings and realize they probably called him for those jobs. Highlighting a particularly recent work and sharing the impact music has in our lives, one of you shared, in an indication of his stature in the trumpet world, when the pandemic shuttered concert halls last spring, this professor was invited to participate in a virtual performance of a new piece titled A Hope for the Future. He and 31 other internationally recognized trumpet players from top orchestras, bands, pop groups, and collegiate music faculties in various countries recorded their parts in isolation to honor frontline healthcare workers. The resulting virtual performance video has over 350,000 views on YouTube. Another of you reviewed his performance in the DePauw University Band's 2012 recording of Joseph Turin's Fandango for solo trumpet, solo trombone, and band playing. You noted, in his rendition of the solo trumpet line, one finds precise articulation, particularly notable on the quick bursts of repeated pitches, judicious use and control of vibrato to enliven individual notes, a focused resonant tone across the full range of the instrument, and impeccable intonation and rhythmic accuracy. With assurance, he molds and shapes each phrase into a carrier of energy that builds until its final release in the high notes, allowing them and listeners' spirits to soar. While the Minar Award focuses on scholarly accomplishment, some of my quotes early in this citation spoke to the humanity of our colleague, so I want to close with a story I know firsthand that illustrates the impact this professor has had on students. You see, he and I shared a student. The student who majored in biochemistry is also an African American and is now a surgical resident in otolaryngology, or for those of you who aren't immersed in the medical lingo, a head and neck surgical resident. Not only did this student study science, she also studied with our colleague and played in the university band. Whether our colleague is fully aware, I know how impactful he was as a role model of compassionate excellence and perseverance in the face of challenges. I heard about his support and how he pushed her to excel in her music and beyond. His name came up weekly between 2007 and 2011, when I was fortunate enough to regularly interact with Dr. Shannon Faison as her instructor, informal advisor, and mentor to what was then underrepresented in science, now students of color in science. Please join me in congratulating our colleague, Leonard Foy, professor of music, whose impressive scholarly and artistic record is so deep I can only highlight a few of his contributions. As one of our College of Liberal Arts colleagues so aptly wrote, this award represents an opportunity to honor Lenny's musicianship, the intersections of jazz and classical music, music that supports, nurtures, and participates in communities of Black musicianship, and our wonderful colleague. Congratulations, Lenny.